Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Unreal Season 2, Episode 2. It's called Insurgent. So spoilers for the episode. This is a Patreon sponsored review. Thank you very much to Board Now for picking the show. So yeah, this one's really entertaining. Like, there's a lot of funny moments in this episode because effectively when they try and continue the first night of this, when they get, the suitor back, Darius back. I'm still learning all the new names. I guess it's going to be a running problem with this show is that every season they bring on 12 new women and a new suitor, and I'm trying to remember who everyone is. But they bring him back, they're going to do the bikini thing, and very quickly they get to this position where both Chet and Quinn are giving different orders, and there's a point where Jeremy just sort of puts his camera down and says, "Hey, you're going to have to tell us which one's in charge. Like, we need to know who we're following here because you're giving us different conflicting instructions and orders." And they both say they're in charge. It's really weird. So it kind of ends up splitting into kind of a civil war where basically Chet is going to take Jeremy, shoot like what he wants from the episode, which is lots of, naughty shots of the girls in bikinis. He wants sexy, he wants loud, he wants rambunctious. Obviously, Quinn wants to do something that's a bit more typical everlasting, but wants to create drama with causing fights, like we've seen them do from this first season. And they're going to both shoot simultaneously and get their own thing and edit their own version of the episode and then make the executive pick which one's better. So it gets kind of petty, I guess is what we're saying here. It gets really petty, and they're going to try and make their own version of the show. But at least a lot of funny bits. Like, there's a whole moment where the Confederate girl, which Beth Ann, I think is her name, she's convinced to put on her bikini that's a Confederate flag, and she's hesitant, but Rachel kind of talks her into it. And even though the other girl, Ruby, who's the activist character, she points out the suitor's black, which they don't all know yet, but she knows that from the first episode. So she doesn't really want to do it, but she's talked into it. When she does reveal her bikini next to everyone else, a lot of the other women are all kind of looking at her like, should we say something? This is inappropriate. It feels like we should sort of step in. Later on, when she actually is convinced to go up and talk to Darius, and she basically does feel embarrassed because when she sees who it is, it turns out she's a fan of his, and she feels bad because she doesn't want to actually make him feel like she's actually saying anything political with her outfit, which is, its own can of worms of how naive she is. And she tries to argue with Ruby at one point that, oh, this is about heritage, this is about this, it's not about that, and she tries to say that I'm proud of my heritage, unlike you. And it gets kind of in the weeds with the racial tension, I guess we'll call it. But there's a whole bit here that it builds up to where she says, you know what, I feel bad, I didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable, there's only one thing I can do to make this right. And Beth Ann takes her bikini top off, exposing her boobs, and obviously it's a funny moment in general, but the bit that got me laughing was about a minute later, Chet comes running round the corner with Jeremy behind him holding the camera saying, don't cover the boobies, don't cover the boobies. And then when he realizes they've been covered by a shirt, he's like, we missed the boobies. That was legitimately very funny. And there's a lot of funny lines in this. There's a whole section where the presenter is nagging Quinn about stuff and saying that he can try new things, he can sing. And Quinn turns around and says, and I can shoot ping pong balls from my vagina, but no one wants to see that. And there's just a great moment on his face where you can tell that he does want to see that. And she's like, just stop talking and get away from me. And just there's just a lot of humor in this episode. There's this competitive kind of vibe to it, and that is entertaining. And honestly, I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to miss some details here as I'm talking about it, because it felt like there was a lot going on. There's a lot of characters, a lot of them are new characters still. I mean, they were in the first episode to a point, but we get a few more of the girls, we get a bit more of, Hot Rachel, one's a cop, it turns out, one's an MMA fighter, and they might have mentioned that in episode 1, but, they weren't focused on in any great degree that I could remember it. So no, there's a lot spinning, but a credit to the episode, though, is that it never feels overwhelming. Like, it's maybe a little difficult for me to sit down and recount everything I just saw, because, frankly, there was a lot of it and a lot of moving parts, but it was always flowing very effortlessly. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't effortless, but it felt effortless watching it. It felt like they knew what they were doing and everything was kind of spinning. And this is, like stuff intersecting. You've got Rachel's stuff with Gwen and feeling like she's had this opportunity taken away from her again. So there's friction there. And that sort of bubbles into friction with Jay, who also does feel sympathy for Rachel, but also has to kind of go up against her. And Jay's also the one kind of trying to give Ruby advice and kind of point out that she's going to have to make some compromises, which Ruby's not really all excited about, but he tries to justify it and kind of admits that, yeah, Rachel lied to you, like the suitor didn't ask for you specifically, that was all a lie, you can't trust her, but hey, I will actually try and help you get through this as best I can. And I don't think he's trying to manipulate her necessarily, I think he actually does care, but he also understands the context of the game and how it actually works. But he's very open and honest and sort of says, yeah, you were kind of cast to just be the angry black woman, and that's all you were going to be. But maybe because the suitor is who he is, this is maybe a chance where you might survive longer than that if you play the game right. So is she willing to do that? It didn't seem like she was. She was putting on the t-shirt, which I admit is a reference I don't get. There's a t-shirt saying I can't breathe. I don't know where that's from. I assume it's a reference to something specific in recent American politics, but I do not recognize it. So regardless, like, I think all these bits are playing off each other quite well, and I think one of the interesting things that I was watching for is seeing how he plays off the various women and how he reacts to some of them. Obviously, like, he has like some preconceived notions about a couple of them because one's in a Confederate flag, and he's kind of like holding back his reactions to that. But it's also raised from the other characters that maybe, given that he wants forgiveness from the press for saying something to someone, badly in an interview where he said, bitch, please, the idea that he's forgiving to someone who's wearing a Confederate flag bikini might play with a lot of the white American audience. So there's kind of a little bit of like a playing the political game here. But we don't know him that well as a character to know if he's willing to do that. Like, we don't know that. We don't know for sure if he is willing to play the game. Maybe he does have a hard moral line that he doesn't want to surpass. It's something that Ruby challenges. Ruby is kind of like, she calls him a pussy repeatedly, actually, for him being nice to Beth Ann with the Confederate flag. She's mad that he didn't, confront her more about that and say something about it more directly. So when she goes up to speak to him, he's kind of got preconceived notions about her. He kind of immediately gets her vibe and is like, oh, this isn't your scene. Like, you're not the type of woman who's normally at one of these stupid shows. But at the same time, there's kind of when he's actually picking who's going to stay in the show at the end, and he's like, selecting, it's all the ones we've met have been selected pretty much. There's no real surprises. But he picks her, right? And she wasn't expecting to be picked. And she's kind of surprised. She's still wearing the t-shirt, and he says, do you really think everyone in the locker room when I go back to playing football would like let me hear the end of it if I said no to someone wearing that shirt? Like, it felt like like he's still aware of what she's talking about. He's very suave, and he's playing the game, and he's doing all the smiles for the camera and all that. He's very charismatic, but it doesn't feel like he's oblivious to what's going on around him or he's ignorant to it. And it felt like there's a little moment here where she actually felt reassured that there's more to him than just the glitzy, like, superstar football player who likes to spend time with ladies. So, like that was interesting. He also picks Beth Ann and keeps her around. Although he does say to Ruby, because he picks Ruby after her, and she's like, wait, why did you keep her? And he's like, oh, they kind of asked me to. They asked me to keep her. And she's like, did they ask me to keep me? Like, did they ask you to keep me? And he's like, no, I made that choice on my own. So, and I think that's interesting. It's interesting that the politicking of the show is forcing him, at least to an extent, to keep on the perceived racist white woman, but he himself has the power to keep on the black activist character. And there could be kind of an interesting push and pull from a moral perspective of what he's willing to compromise and give into the show producers, and what he believes in actually doing and keeping people on the show. Whether because he's actually romantically interested in certain characters, or he just kind of, appreciates who she is and wants her to be around and doesn't want to just get rid of her because of this type of person. So I think there's some interesting dynamics at play. I think they're really playing with the very kind of messy, more complex, like, things that are just going on with having a black suitor and how that intersects with all the different women who are there and the different kind of people that they are. And like, again, obviously the two extreme ends are the black activist and the Confederate flag bikini girl, but there's a lot of sort of in between as well, right? There's varying degrees in between. And some of the women are quite opinionated about Beth Ann and her bikini. So I think they're doing a lot of interesting stuff with that. It's definitely way more complex than it ever was with Adam. This feels like there's a lot more going on. I mean, Rachel's still patting herself on the back about making history, of course, and all that. Which does bubble up to the big thing with her this episode. Obviously, she got like a package from her mum with meds in it, which she threw out at first, then she kept them later on. We didn't see her take any, though. She might have just put them in her bag. But she did keep them, right? So she's still considering using the meds. And we see Quinn be cruel again. Like when Rachel kind of... I don't even want to say fights back, just kind of like... She's almost like a child throwing a tantrum to a parent, right? And that's maybe a little harsh, because it's not maybe that juvenile, but it kind of still had that vibe to it when she's basically trying to convince Quinn to let her like do the job, but she's not been given a chance to actually do the job, and Quinn chews her out. Quinn does get cruel. She brings up her mother. She says, oh, maybe your mother's right about you. Maybe you are just a bit crazy, and that's why you can't do this job. And Jay's even in her ear at multiple points this episode saying that Quinn's never going to leave. Like, she'll say she will, but she never will. And the same way that Chet kept saying he was going to leave his wife, but then wouldn't. And then even when he did, it kind of had a bit of a monkey's paw thing. It kind of feels the same with Quinn in the job. Like, Quinn's never going to leave the job and let her have it. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting so far. But yeah, she makes Rachel cry a little bit. And she it feels cruel again. It feels like maybe this isn't a healthy relationship. Like, as happy as they were getting the best friend tattoos and whatnot, it doesn't feel like they are good for each other. So I'm really curious to the growth that we're going to have with them again this season. It's definitely a complex relationship. I'll give it that. If I have any critique, it's maybe that we catapulted back to this moment of Quinn being in charge and Rachel feeling bad about it. Maybe we could have like spread that out a little bit more over time rather than just like, going boom boom episode 1, 2. But it's a minor quibble in the grand scheme of things, because I do think this episode does feel very full and feels like it hits a lot of notes. But this all leads to Rachel trying to play the game herself. Because she goes to, I think it's Gary's, the executive, to basically say, hey, these two people, Chet and Quinn, are trying to make their own versions of the show. They're going to make you decide which one is better. And he obviously is alarmed to hear this. He thinks it's very unprofessional, and it's a whole, whatever. Like, clearly, part of me thought, oh, maybe he'll think it's amusing and this will backfire. Instead, he does seem to think this is a thing. And it's very clear, this entire scene, that he is acutely aware that Rachel is gunning to be in charge. Because Rachel is saying, hey, I'm the one that's been boots on the ground. I'm the one that's been delivering this show for years. And they're both messing things up. And she's basically trying to play what Quinn did to Chet last season and kind of go over her head, and Chet's head in this case, and maybe put herself in the position where she's the one in charge. And she thinks she's accomplished it. And I think Gary's aware that she's trying to do that the entire time. He's not an idiot in this scene. He's clearly taking all this in. But of course, the ironic ending to this is that it's building up to him introducing who's actually in charge now, and Rachel's sitting there all smug, is that he brings in some young white guy who's had some success on other TV shows and says, he's the one running this show now, everyone answers to him. And this you guy, who I think is Coleman, he sits down and says, hey, that was ballsy, you going to speak to Gary like that, but you got me. This is going to be fun. And that's kind of where we end the episode with the main cast. So this is interesting. It's interesting that neither Quinn or Chet are in charge. And I'm kind of glad, actually. As much as it might have been interesting seeing Rachel be in charge and having them answer to her, this is a complete wild card of a situation. It plays into the themes, of course, that some young white guy who's never worked on the show before is now the one in charge, and how frustrating that'll be to Quinn, to Rachel, and even Chet to an extent. Although it sounds like he likes Chet's ideas more than the others, so Chet's failing upwards yet again because he's the other dude, I guess. But I think this is good in the sense that while I found them competing on set and bickering and doing their own thing very funny this episode, I do think, given what we went through in season 1 with Chet and Quinn at odds with each other, I do think this would have got old after a little bit. If we'd done a few episodes of this, I think it has started to get maybe old that we're still just doing them fighting with each other. Eventually, like, the show has to be getting made, and the drama has to come from what we're doing in the show specifically, rather than the fight to what type of show it can be. So I do think it was wise to sort of like shake things up, because it really feels at the end of this episode that while this is episode 2, it feels like this and episode 1 were both the double premiere in a lot of ways. I think this ending here with this new character being in charge feels at the end of like the mission statement of what this season is now doing. And I think it's promising. I think there's a lot of promise here. I mean, it's hard to get a complete read on the character yet. There's, we only had one scene with him, but he seems very confident, and that could be interesting. So we'll see how that goes. I also love the running gag of Hot Rachel being a thing, and Hot Rachel even trying to become friends with Rachel, and Rachel not being too pleased about it. Chet hearing the nickname Hot Rachel and just immediately liking it. It's also very funny, given who he is. Of course, that terminology would work for him. So yeah, I that's a funny running gag for sure. I'm enjoying that. So I should probably talk a little bit about the NFL daughter character. Let me get her name here, because Tiffany's the name. It's the one girl that I kind of glossed over when I was talking about the others earlier, and she does get a bit of focus in the middle here. So Quinn likes her because she's the wifey. She's the one who'll look at the long-term relationship material, and she wants to promote that. However, Chet, seeing that she is displeased, Tiffany that is, he goes over and gets in her ear and basically convinces her to act up. Basically, she's upset because she thinks that because her father owns an NFL team, a rival team of our suitor here, Darius, she thinks that this was all set up, that her dad got her on the show, and like, maybe not in these words, but kind of feels like maybe she's been pimped out a little bit to try and like sweeten the deal with them, to maybe convince them to like jump ship or something like that, or whatever it is, right? She's here for PR, to be sexy PR, and she specifically points out at one point that she hates being even a football daughter. She doesn't want to be a football wife because it's all about being the arm candy and smelling for the cameras and never have anything meaningful to do. Like, she hates it. So she's kind of down in the dumps, and Chet hears this and basically convinces her that if she wants to get like shoved off the show, the quickest way to do that, to convince everyone that she's not a wifey, is to go and find one of Darius's friends that are here and throw herself at one of them, because he wouldn't want someone around that had already thrown herself at one of his friends. So she finds the agent character that Rachel was already with before, and gets hot and heavy with him. But Rachel and Quinn catch it and like bust in, and she kind of chews him out for it, and she talks to her about it. And Rachel actually does a pretty decent job of convincing Tiffany that, maybe there's more to him than that. And I don't even know if she's completely lying here. I don't actually remember what they said in the first episode to know if she is lying. But she says that she has no idea who her dad is. Rachel says that she found her and called her and found, got the audition and all that. She had no idea what her connection to the NFL was. That is a complete coincidence. So it basically like sets her on this path where she goes up to talk to Darius, because like the girls are kind of going up one by one to talk to her. She goes up and kind of like, makes some small talk, but quite quickly he's like, "Hey, I know who you are. Like, you're so-and-so's daughter." And she kind of like deflects it in a nice, like, sort of pleasant way by just kind of criticizing his playing on the field, and they kind of laugh it off and they're joking, and there's a bit of chemistry, and it's like, oh hey, Quinn's happy because the wifey mode has been engaged. But at the same time, Chet also got footage of her with the other guy, so there's some, potential kerfuffle there. And it's definitely implied that maybe he knows by the end of the episode that something happened, but still chose to keep her. And she was picked last as well, which she points out, no one picks me last for anything. So, I mean, obviously one of the aims of this episode, outside of the Chet and Quinn rivalry, and all the turmoil that Rachel goes through trying to like make it work for her. The main point of this episode in a lot of ways is to further establish a lot of these other characters. Ruby got a lot of time last episode and still gets a chunk here, but we now have like a good 4 or 5 that we can kind of like focus in on and see how they play off of each other. And now we know Tiffany, now we know Ruby, we know Beth Ann, we know Hot Rachel. And Hot Rachel's attempt to try and get noticed by Darius is to pretend that she's drowning, and he jumps in the pool and saves her. But she's actually like a swimming champion, so you know, she's just playing the game. What's funny about that though is that kind of is a capper on another little mini subplot where oh god, what's it? Give me a second. Madison, yes, Madison, the one who wants to be Rachel, who was oddly turned on by like having Rachel give her advice in her ear last episode at that. But she basically begs Rachel to like, hey, you're Quinn now, let me be the new Rachel. I loved doing that last time. Let me like handle the girls. And the payoff here with Hot Rachel jumping in the pool is that Madison never thought of that. It was actually Hot Rachel who thought like Rachel and tricked him and like manipulated the events to have her get noticed and have this sweet moment shared with them that the producers liked. It's a roaring success on the show. And she's like, hey, no, and Madison clearly is like, oh, I never thought of that. I'm bad at this. Like my like, because you know, all the producers have their girls and they're the ones like suggesting things and manipulating them into doing stuff. This was a case where Madison was supposed to do that, but the girl herself thought of the idea and is now basically going to help Madison look better. And even says, hey, if you get me one-on-one time with Darius, I'll help you. I'll help you like move on up in this cutthroat, like, you know, dog eat dog business that you're in. Like you want to be noticed by your bosses, you want to like, stand out. I'll make you look better, which is a really interesting spin. I'm actually really curious about this little like relationship and subplot and see how it goes forward and how she might like, I don't know, like get the sort of ideas that Rachel would get, and then it'll make Madison look good because Madison can take credit for it. But maybe that'll backfire at some point when she does something that would get Madison into trouble or whatever. There's some interesting things at play there. So that was the other element that was in the episode. So yeah, that's pretty much most of the things that I want to talk about. There was a little bit of weird tension with Jeremy and the agent guy, because Jeremy goes up and like tells him that Rachel's crazy. And like she's got medical issues, like mental health issues and stuff like that. So there's lots of little things sprinkled throughout as well. There's no way I'm going to talk about all of them, but the big stuff here was really good. I think I liked this episode a bit more than the first one. The first one was solid and it set up a lot of interesting things. I think this one was laugh out loud funny a lot. It did a lot of important character stuff, and it did like shake things up at the end and give us a new status quo. And I think you could argue that the contestants this season are already a bit more interesting than last season. Not that the last season's contestants were bad. Like there was obviously some interesting dynamics, but for the most part, they were all just trying to get Adam. Obviously, Grace had like her own thing that kind of blossomed into something kind of nice that was different. But this season, it feels like there's a lot of other things going on in the motives as opposed to just trying to get the guy. You know, or at the very least, there's more wrinkles to them trying to get him. And then you've got the activist character who's, of course, like got kind of different goals, but of course, part of the drama might be that she falls for him anyway. Obviously, I suspect that might still kind of happen, but I kind of trust this show to not be too cliched with it. But you know, we'll see. We'll see if that benefit of the doubt pans out. But that is my thoughts on episode 2 of UnReal season 2. Thank you very much for joining me. You can, of course, support all the shows and all the reviews, and both here and over the movie podcast channel, Male Fuzz Movies, by going to patreon.com/MaleFuzzTV and supporting and getting some bonuses. You can also support us via YouTube membership or YouTube thanks. Any support from anywhere is greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for joining me. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?